Why carbohydrates are good for you. I'm starting to feel like I get all the controversial topics here. In saying that, I can't believe that this is a controversial topic to begin with. Carbs are great, and I'm going to tell you exactly why that is and just how you can incorporate carbs into your daily life for better health, performance, and recovery. Hi, I'm Wright, an accredited nutritionist, and I specialize in helping people all across the world achieve their goals without silly fad diets. First things first, let's talk about exactly what carbs are and then chat a bit about where this anti-carb messaging comes from, what carbs are and how they actually work. Carbohydrates are one of the three macronutrients along with fat and protein and are an important part of a healthy, balanced diet. There are two types of carb. Simple and complex. Simple carbs are made up of one or two sugar molecules. Just imagine these as happy little individual mini carbs. These are the ones that people kick up the most fuss about, and that's partly because of their influence on our insulin levels, which we'll discuss later, but also this notion that these are addictive. I'm not a fan of calling these kinds of carbs addictive, as there isn't really any clear evidence for that. It's most likely the totality of the food itself, as opposed to the sugar content, which people find so hard to pass up. It's likely down to the palatability of the food or meal rather than the influence of any one nutrient. Studies have shown that addictive behaviours are noted towards foods which are more energy dense, more processed, higher in fat, as well as those in added sugars. If sugar was a singular addictive component within a food, then people would be raiding the fruit section of your local supermarket. The other form of carbohydrate is the complex carbohydrate. Complex carbs are made up of 3 or more sugar molecules and are found in foods like brown rice, oats, oatmeal, and beans. Easiest way to picture complex carbs is like a daisy chain with all these smaller individual carbs, the sugars, being linked together. Not all carbs are like this. Some appear in different forms and have different functions, like structural carbs that we find in plants. But for the sake of making life easy, it may be easiest to picture the carbs that we eat as either individuals or like these daisy chain structures that I mentioned. The carbs that we eat are broken down into their individual sugars, if not already appearing in that form, which are then used for energy by the body or transported around the body to be stored. The body breaks down almost all of the carbs we eat into glucose, with complex carbs taking longer to digest, providing a slower and more steady release of energy. This is why complex carbs are often recommended for people who are trying to lose weight or manage their diabetes. The slow digestion and absorption of the carbs into our bloodstream better helps regulate blood sugar levels, as well as hunger and satiety. It also helps better regulate the release of insulin, a hormone responsible for shuttling carbohydrates into the cells and proclaimed to be the co-conspirator alongside carbs, causing the rise in obesity. Dispelling the myth that carbs cause obesity. Many people have been made to believe that carbs cause weight gain, but they've been fed a lie. Well, maybe not a lie, but at least a half-truth. The reason why carbs have been vilified is mainly down to sugar. As I mentioned, when we eat and digest carbs, our blood sugar rises and in turn insulin spikes. The more simple the carb source and/or the greater the serving that we consume, the more our blood sugar spikes and in turn insulin. When insulin spikes, the breakdown of fat is temporarily blunted. This has created a mindset that carbs must be bad because they stop fat loss and that they therefore cause weight gain. However, recent trends show that the prevalence of obesity continues to steadily climb, even when carbohydrate intake has steadily decreased. When we look historically, there are many cultures who have a relatively high carbohydrate intake but low rates of obesity. One really interesting comparison is to look at the change in obesity in Japanese people who migrated to the US. Traditionally, the Japanese diet is one rich in carbohydrates. In fact, carbohydrates contribute north of 60% of their total energy intake, and the observed rate of obesity is relatively low compared to other developed countries. That all changes when you look at groups of people whose family have come from Japan or moved to the US from Japan themselves. In these families, the prevalence of obesity skyrockets, yet the total contribution of carbohydrate to their daily energy intake decreases, which suggests that carbs may not be the problem. Finally, when you actually look at direct comparisons of different diets, it basically doesn't matter what the nutrient makeup of the diet is itself. If the person is in a calorie deficit, they will lose weight. Now, there might be some advantage to higher protein diets, but there isn't anything concrete to suggest that a higher fat or higher carb intake is somehow superior to the alternative. If you'd like a bit more on the low fat versus low carb debate, be sure to check out Uncle Richie's video on the subject here. Okay, so you know what carbs are. You hopefully trust that they're not bad for you. I mean, you can trust me, I'm a reliable looking guy. But just on the very slim chance that you aren't willing to just take my word, then here's some really important reasons to include them, and maybe, just maybe, you're willing to buy into the concepts of carbs actually being good for you. Carbs are great. and here's why. There are many reasons to champion carbs. They are the primary source of fuel for our body, and our brain basically runs on carbs. Carbs can also have a really positive effect on our mood and are linked to the production of serotonin. They've also been shown to help reduce levels of stress as well. Where carbs really excel is the fueling of exercise and optimizing recovery. When we exercise, our body will burn through carbs for fuel at a much higher rate. The more prolonged the exercise, the more the carbs will be used up, eventually depleting our glycogen stores, ultimately leading to a decline in performance, muscle fatigue, and even hitting the wall. Having an easily digestible source of carbohydrate leading into exercise or even during provides an alternative fuel source and can better preserve our glycogen. Preserving our glycogen can lead to better performance and enhanced recovery. Foods like fruits, sweets, cereals, and most starchy, white, tasty baked goods are all great options in the hour leading up into exercise. During exercise, you'll probably want to go for an energy gel or drink, as I don't know how practical it would be to start chomping down on a chocolate eclair in the middle of the gym or during a match. The last really important point to touch on when it comes to carbs is that you rarely, if ever, find carbs on their own. We don't eat nutrients, we eat food. What's great about that is that the foods that we find plenty of carbs in are also jam-packed full of other really important nutrients, vitamins, and minerals. Of course, there are less nutritious carb-rich foods, but fruits, veggies, grains, beans, and other legumes are all considered carbs, and they're some of the most nutritious foods that we know of. Can't forget about fiber as well. Technically, it's a carb, and you'll find it in carbs, so carbception, I guess. Anyway, aside from keeping you regular, getting enough fiber, which is around that 25 to 30 gram mark per day, may also help reduce your risk of heart disease, diabetes, and even certain cancers. I hope by now you trust me when I say carbs are well worth including in your diet. All foods and nutrients are welcome in a healthy, balanced approach to nutrition. As always, if you have any more questions or even advice for other viewers just like you, let me know in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe to the Myprotein YouTube channel for more great evidence-based nutrition information.